As I walked out of the water, I looked toward the detached pension where we were staying. There was a small kitchen window above the sink. As I glanced at it, I noticed what looked like a dark figure standing inside. I stopped. What was that? My first thought was that it might be the owner. But then I immediately questioned it. Why would the owner be inside our room? Something didn't feel right, so I hurried back toward the house, stepped inside, and threw open the door. I searched every room. No one. The place was completely empty. I stood there, confused. What? Did I imagine it again? Was I just seeing things? Feeling uneasy, I changed into dry clothes. Just in case, I checked all of our belongings to make sure nothing had been taken. Everything was exactly where we'd left it. Every bag was still zipped shut. Nothing was missing. After making sure everything was fine, I walked back outside. I turned toward the river, expecting to see my friends still playing in the water. But they were gone. Not a single one of them was there. Where did they go? I looked upstream first. There was a small waterfall where the river flowed down. Unless someone was a salmon, there was no way they could have gone that direction. Even a salmon would have struggled to get past those rocks. So I ruled that out immediately. There was no reason they would have climbed out of the water, soaking wet, and wandered off somewhere, either. Then another thought crossed my mind. Are they trying to prank me? So I started walking downstream, following the river. As I walked, I kept scanning the water beside me. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't see any of them. I couldn't hear their voices. I couldn't hear anyone splashing. The only sound was the steady flow of the river. A growing sense of unease settled over me. Something isn't right. Where did they go? Did they head somewhere else? My friends were all around 178 to 180 centimeters tall. It wasn't like they were little kids who could simply be swept away by the current. I kept trying to convince myself everything was fine as I continued walking downstream. Then, something caught my eye. Far ahead, in the middle of the river, something appeared to be snagged against a fallen branch. At first, I thought it was just another piece of driftwood. But when I looked more closely, I realized what I was seeing. It was the heel of a human foot. At first, I couldn't be sure what I was looking at. Most of it was hidden behind thick riverside grass. Only the heel was visible above the water. I stared at it, wondering if my eyes were playing tricks on me. But after a few seconds, I realized it really was a human heel. Someone was floating in the river. The moment that realization hit me, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Didalba. Even now, thinking back on that moment gives me chills. The instant I recognized what I was seeing and shouted, it was as if something had been waiting for that exact moment. As though someone had given the signal, the bodies suddenly began drifting downstream. Until then, they had remained almost perfectly still. But the second I yelled, they started floating away. As the current carried them along, I caught brief glimpses of their bodies between the ripples. All three of my friends were floating face down in the water. Their faces submerged beneath the surface, slowly drifting away with the current. I started screaming their names as I ran downstream. Didalba, hey, wake up. I ran as fast as I could, but something felt horribly wrong. The current was moving much faster than it had looked before. As I chased after them, I noticed something that still haunts me to this day. Their bodies weren't moving naturally. People who are drowning usually struggle. They thrash their arms, their bodies twist with the current. But my friends, all three of them, were perfectly rigid. Their arms were straight at their sides, as if they were standing at attention. Not a single limb moved. They floated like three motionless logs, face down in the water, their noses submerged beneath the surface as the current carried them away. I didn't have time to think about how unnatural it looked. All I could think was, they're going to die. I kept running and screaming for help. Eventually, farther downstream, I spotted a small restaurant beside the river. It was one of those places that served food to visitors near the valley, things like chicken soup and local dishes. There were customers outside, children playing nearby, and the owners were working. I waved both arms wildly and screamed, "Help, please! Help!" Thankfully, everyone reacted immediately. The owners and several customers rushed toward the river. Without hesitating, they jumped into the water. Together, they managed to pull my friends out onto the bank. By the time I caught up, I was completely out of breath. People had already started CPR. Someone was giving rescue breaths. Others were shouting, "They're not breathing." Several women nearby were crying in panic, repeating, "Oh my God. Oh my God." The whole riverbank had fallen into chaos. I was shaking so badly that I could barely stand. All I could think was, what if they die? What if I lose all of them? After several rounds of CPR, one of them suddenly coughed. Water poured from his mouth. Then another. Then another. A weak gasp escaped one of them. The people around us immediately erupted in relief. They're alive. They're alive. Some even began clapping, overwhelmed that all three had started breathing again. Not long afterward, the paramedics arrived. One by one, my friends were loaded into the ambulances. Then the sirens faded into the distance as they were rushed to the hospital. I just stood there, completely numb. My mind had gone blank. Then it hit me. My car was still back at the pension, and all of my friends' belongings were still inside. I needed to collect everything and then head to the hospital myself. After getting the name and location of the hospital from the paramedics, I started walking back toward the pension. The whole way back, my thoughts kept racing. What just happened? How could all three of them end up in the water like that? How is that even possible? Nothing made sense. I kept replaying the scene over and over in my head as I walked. Then something caught my eye. There was a dirt path leading from our pension down to the river. A few meters off to the side of that path stood a large sign. At first, I barely noticed it. It was almost completely covered in ivy. The vines hid nearly all of the writing. But as I got closer, something about it suddenly drew my attention. Anyone heading down to that river to swim should have seen that sign. It should have been impossible to miss. But somehow, none of us had noticed it on the way down. Yet as I walked back toward the pension, there it was. The ivy covering it had gaps just wide enough for the warning to be read. Warning: no swimming, multiple drowning accidents have occurred here. The sign was standing right there. The moment I read it, my mind went blank. Then one thought exploded into my head. But she told us it was okay to swim. Anger immediately replaced the shock. I ran toward the pension, shouting, "Sir, sir." The owner came out of the office looking completely confused. "What is it? Why are you yelling?" I pointed toward the river. "You told us it was okay to swim there." He frowned. "You swam there?" I stared at him. "No." "Where's your wife?" I asked her directly. "She told me we could swim there." His expression changed. "What are you talking about? My wife doesn't come here. She doesn't manage the pension. She's at home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean?" I spoke to her myself. "My friend saw both of you." But he shook his head. "No, my wife never comes here. I handle everything by myself." At that moment, I was convinced he was lying to protect her. We argued back and forth for quite a while. Then I happened to look around. Ironically, we were standing in the exact same place where I'd spoken with the woman earlier that day. As I glanced around, something caught my eye. Mounted high on a nearby tree was a security camera. I pointed straight at it. "Let's check that. It must have recorded everything." "Let's see how long you can keep lying." The owner immediately objected. "Why would we look at that? I don't have any obligation to show you the footage." I refused to back down. "If you won't show me, I'll call the police. I'll make this an official investigation. So let's settle this the easy way." He let out a long, frustrated sigh. "Fine. Wait here. I'll find the footage from around the time you arrived and show you only that part." He went back inside. I waited outside, convinced the recording would prove I was right. Several minutes later, the office door opened again. The owner called me inside. But this time, there was something different about his voice. The anger from our argument was gone. Instead, he sounded shaken. I remember thinking, what's with him? Why is he acting so confident all of a sudden? I walked inside and said, "Fine. Show me." He didn't say much. He simply started playing the security footage. On the screen, I walked out of the pension. I expected to see myself talking to the owner's wife. I expected to see the conversation. To see myself thanking her before walking back inside. But that's not what the video showed. I walked out. Then I stopped. I stood completely still. For what felt like 1 or 2 full minutes, I didn't move an inch. I was just standing there, staring into empty space. Then, without anyone standing in front of me, I suddenly bowed my head. "Thank you," and I walked back inside. The moment I saw that, a shock ran through my entire body. My skin tingled from head to toe. Only one thought entered my mind. I've lost my mind. Something is seriously wrong with me. Do I have schizophrenia? Some kind of dissociative disorder? I couldn't think of any other explanation. The owner looked at me and asked, "Son, are you all right? Is there something wrong with you?" His attitude had completely changed. He no longer sounded defensive. Instead, he looked genuinely concerned. Still staring at the monitor, I muttered, "No. That can't be right. I talked to your wife. I really talked to her." I could barely get the words out. He kept telling me, "You should go to a hospital. You really need to get yourself checked." I stood there looking as though I was about to cry. "No, that can't be." I kept repeating it to myself. Finally, he interrupted me. "Just go. Your friends were in an accident, weren't they? Forget about this and go." I left the office in a daze. As I walked back to my car, only one question echoed inside my head. What's happening to me? Have I really gone insane? Do I actually have a mental illness? Should I see a doctor? By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking so violently that I couldn't even grip the steering wheel. I sat there alone, clenching my fists, curling forward in my seat, trying to calm myself. "Calm down. You have to get to the hospital. Calm down. Just breathe." I repeated those words to myself over and over until my trembling eased enough for me to start the engine. I drove straight to the hospital. By the time I arrived, all three of my friends had regained consciousness. They were sitting up in their hospital beds, talking to each other. But I could barely bring myself to walk into the room. As far as I was concerned, I had almost gotten them killed. I was the one who told everyone. The owner said it's okay to swim there. There had been a warning sign right there, saying people had drowned in that river. And yet I had convinced everyone to get into the water. The guilt was crushing me. I walked into the room feeling completely broken. The three of them stopped talking and looked at me. My eyes filled with tears. I bowed my head and said, "Guys, I'm so sorry. I think this is all my fault. I think something's wrong with me. I think I need to go to a hospital and get my head checked. I'm really sorry." I couldn't stop apologizing. For a few moments, none of them said anything. Then Didalba looked at me. "Jimmy, this isn't your fault. It's not your fault." Then he said something I never expected. "We were all lured by a ghost." At that point, I still didn't believe him. I assumed he was only saying that because he felt sorry for me. I thought he was trying to comfort me. But then Didalba started telling me what had happened after I'd gone back to the pension. He said that after watching me leave because I was cold, he happened to look toward the pension. And there, he saw the exact same thing I had seen. A dark figure standing inside the kitchen window. He said the dark figure inside the kitchen was staring directly at me through the window. But unlike me, he said he saw it much more clearly. To me, it had looked like a cloud of black smoke. To him, it was a woman, and her lower jaw hung all the way down to her chest. That was the moment chills ran through my entire body. I'd never told any of my friends about the sleep paralysis. I'd never mentioned the woman I'd seen. I'd never told anyone about her jaw stretching down to her chest. There was no way Didalba could have known that, yet he described her exactly as I had seen her. He told me, "She was standing there, staring at you. Then, after you went back inside the pension, she walked straight through the wall, she came outside. And just stood there, watching you from outside while you were inside the room. After a while," he said, "the woman simply disappeared." Not long after that, another friend, let's call him A, looked at everyone and said, "Hey, we've got to do the classic water game challenge. Let's see who can hold their breath underwater the longest." Everyone laughed. "Yeah, let's do it." The three of them lined up in the river. To stay completely submerged, they shifted their weight and crouched beneath the surface, preparing to hold themselves underwater. Someone shouted, "Ready, go." All three of them pinched their noses and disappeared beneath the water. Didalba wasn't thinking about anything strange anymore. He simply started counting the seconds in his head. 10, 15, then suddenly, splash, he heard someone dive into the water. His first thought was that I'd come back to surprise them. Thinking I was trying to prank them, he opened his eyes slightly beneath the surface to see who had jumped in. When Didalba opened his eyes underwater just a little, he saw something in the distance. From the riverbed, the same woman he had seen at the pension was crawling toward him. She wasn't swimming, she was dragging herself forward with her hands, crawling along the bottom of the river as she slowly approached. Her jaw hung unnaturally low, stretching all the way down to her chest. Her mouth was wide open. And her eyes, he said they were completely white. No pupils, no expression, just white. She kept crawling closer, closer. Didalba froze. Something's wrong, I have to get out of the water. He tried to push himself upward. He tried to lift his head above the surface. But he couldn't. It felt as though something was pressing down on the top of his head. No matter how hard he struggled, his head wouldn't break through the surface of the water. It was as if an invisible force was holding him beneath it. He thought, what is this? Why does it feel like something is pushing my head down? Instinctively, he reached up toward the top of his head. The moment his hand touched it, he felt something soft. It felt exactly like a human hand. Startled, he looked toward the others. What he saw shocked him. The three of them were unknowingly pressing each other's heads underwater. Friend A had his hands on B's head. B was pushing down on both Didalba and A without saying a word. Without struggling, they were all extending their arms toward one another, calmly holding each other's heads beneath the surface. None of them seemed aware of what they were doing. Didalba said he was struggling desperately for air. The woman kept crawling toward them until she reached the very center of the three of them. Then she stopped. She stared directly at him, and in a calm, almost cheerful voice, she began repeating the same words over and over. Good, 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 good. She sang the words almost like a lullaby. Good, 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 again and again. That was the last thing he remembered. After that, all three of them lost consciousness. The next thing they knew, they had already been swept downstream by the current. Hearing that story left me speechless. Before I had arrived at the hospital, the three of them had apparently been comparing what they remembered. Each of them insisted the same thing. I never pushed anyone underwater. Instead, every one of them believed the others had been holding their head beneath the surface. Didalba said, "No, I didn't push anybody. You guys were holding me down." The others said exactly the same thing. Each person remembered being the victim. Yet somehow, all three of them had actually been pressing down on each other's heads at the same time. After hearing everything, I still didn't know whether to believe it or not. But hearing it from Didalba, the son of a woman deeply involved in spiritual practices, made me hesitate. Could it really be true? At the very least, his words eased the crushing guilt I'd been carrying. My friends kept telling me, "This wasn't your fault. Stop blaming yourself. You're not crazy. You don't need a psychiatric hospital. Don't say things like that." That was when I finally broke down. I burst into tears. I didn't know. I never thought something like this would happen. I cried as I apologized over and over. Eventually I told them, "Get some rest. Recover well. I'll see you after you're discharged." Then I got back into my car and drove home. The entire drive, one question kept circling in my mind. Did something attach itself to me? Or did something happen to all of us together? Should I really go see a shaman? I couldn't stop thinking about it. Earlier, I'd already called my mother to let her know what had happened. I told her my friends had been taken to the hospital and that I'd be coming home afterward. She asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I answered. By the time I got home, I was completely exhausted. The house was silent. A thin line of light shone through the gap beneath my parents' bedroom door, which was closed. I assumed my parents were inside. The moment I realized I was finally home, all the tension drained from my body. I suddenly felt overwhelmingly tired. I lay down on my bed, completely drained. I've never been this exhausted. I pulled out my phone and started searching. Shamans, fortune tellers, ghosts, spirit possession, anything that might explain what had happened. I didn't know anything about those subjects, so I kept reading one article after another, hoping something would make sense. Then I heard my mother's voice from outside my room. "Did you have a safe trip?" I answered without thinking. "Yeah, my friends are going to be okay." A few seconds of silence passed. Then she asked, "Did you have fun?" The question immediately struck me as strange. Fun? How could she ask if it was fun? My friends nearly drowned. I just came back from the hospital. I frowned. Why would Mom ask something like that? Did I do something wrong? Why is she talking like this? Then another thought suddenly crossed my mind. Wait, is that really my mom? I knew my mother was supposed to be home. But I hadn't heard my parents' bedroom door open. I hadn't heard any footsteps. The voice had simply appeared out of nowhere. For some reason, something about it didn't feel right. Still holding my phone, I slowly turned toward the doorway where the voice had come from. Something was standing there. It was a tall, pitch-black figure, at least 2 meters tall. Its lower jaw hung unnaturally low, stretching all the way down to its chest. It swayed loosely as it stood there. The instant I saw it, sleep paralysis hit me. My entire body locked up. I couldn't move a single muscle. The figure remained standing in the doorway. It didn't step inside, it simply stood on the threshold. Then, it slowly tilted its head from side to side. Left, right, and in my mother's voice, it quietly said, "It was fun." The moment I heard those words, everything went black. I don't know whether I fainted or simply lost consciousness. All I remember is hearing those words, "It was fun," and then nothing. I have no idea how long I was unconscious. When I finally woke up, my phone was ringing. It was Didalba. I looked at the screen. 3 missed calls. I immediately called him back. The first thing he asked was, "Jimmy, are you okay?" Still half asleep, I answered in a hoarse voice, "Yeah. I'm okay." He paused. "You don't sound okay. Did something happen again?" I asked, "What do you mean? Why?" Then he said, "My mom wants to see you. Can you come over?" The moment he said that, I remembered. Right, his mother. She's a shaman. I answered immediately, "Yeah, I'll come right now." He hesitated for a second before saying, "So? Something really did happen." I cut him off. "We can talk later. Just tell me where you are. Can I come now?" After a brief silence, he replied, "Yeah, come over." So I got into my car and headed there. One thing surprised me, though. Instead of giving me the address of a shrine or a temple, he gave me the address of an apartment building. I thought, an apartment? Why would a shaman live in an apartment? On the way there, I remembered stories Didalba had told me before. He used to say, "My mom reads fortunes for people in this apartment complex. She's helped so many people. Some people even stay around here just because they want to see her." He always spoke about her with enormous respect. Hearing those stories over the years had made me imagine something mysterious. Someplace filled with talismans, incense, and ritual objects. So I arrived with certain expectations. But when I stepped inside, it looked like nothing more than an ordinary family apartment.